All right. Good evening. Welcome to season 1, episode 3 of Maritime Security Talk. So tonight we're a little shorthanded, but we brought in some major expertise, and that is in the form of Angela Haun, and I'll get to introducing her in a little bit. But we have to do the standard disclaimer. The opinions expressed during this recording are our personal opinions and do not necessarily reflect our past, current, or future employers. So again, this is what us guys and a gal are sitting around and talking about and feeling how we could solve the world's information and physical security problems if we just be given the chance to do it. So while we're at it, if you look below somewhere. This is on YouTube. I think it's over there somewhere. There's a like button and a bell to subscribe. Give us a thumbs up and subscribe. And I know we're going to see you watching this via a link we put in LinkedIn. So while you're there, give us a like as well. And if you're interested and you're not connected with us on LinkedIn, you'll find us by going back and clicking on the video and finding our LinkedIn profiles there so you can join us there. So with that, I want to officially welcome Angela. So Angela, welcome to our fourth episode.
Fourth episode.
Yeah, I mean, we're rolling. So, and our third official guest. So right. This is awesome. And we are truly honored to have you on. So what can you tell us about you? I mean, other than what Nick's kind of said, because he's like, he's like all about, we gotta get Angela, so.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you guys this evening, and I appreciate this opportunity. You guys, I've known Nick and Julio for many years, and Chris, it's nice to meet you. I don't know if our paths have crossed, but I guess as I get older, my memory just isn't what it used to be.
I'll save you that memory. Trying to remember is I just moved here about 18 months ago, just before COVID started, like the week before COVID lockdown. But I think you and I are going to be in the same conference sometime next week or two. So I've seen that you're going to be a speaker or something like that, and I'm also going to be there. So
yes, your name came up recently, and I was trying to, put a face with a name. So now I'm glad to visit with you tonight, and we can regroup at the conference. But it is very nice to be here with you guys. It's my pleasure. I have been doing a lot of panel presentations lately. There had been a bit of a break, and I'm still a little rusty, I'll have to admit. I was doing a lot of this in my previous role. Your first question outs me as a former federal employee. I was very fortunate to have a wonderful 20-year career in Chicago, then at Washington, D.C., and finished up here in Houston. And Houston's been fascinating. It was so different than any other place I lived, but I quickly learned how tied to critical infrastructure and especially security this community is, because we have the largest medical center in the world. We have the energy capital of the world. We have one of the largest, busiest ports in the world. And those things combined with finance and transportation, and we've got it all. So it's been a big learning curve to see who all is out there. I was very lucky to have my last 5 years or so dedicated to outreach and engagement. So that's where I met a lot of people in the Houston community. And that was a real pleasure, because I love being out and dealing with people. And I'm definitely not a records in the office kind of a person. I want to be out and about, engaging, having discussions like these. So it's a real pleasure to be with you guys tonight, and to get to know Chris a little bit better.
So are you an extrovert, introvert, and ambivert? We had that discussion.
I am a forced introvert into an extrovert when I have to be, which is part of being outreach and engagement, right? I had to pretty quickly get over fear of public speaking and I found the more that I did it, the more comfortable I became. I don't know if I became any better or not, but I certainly became more comfortable with it. And, seeing familiar faces where, I'd be going places and I'd always find, at least one or two people that I knew that I could zero in on when I needed some support. And so that's you guys tonight.
Yeah, that's always been my thing. Is like I find one or two faces in the crowd that when I'm speaking, I'm like, oh, they're smiling. I'm gonna keep looking at them. Then I feel weird later. I've been, looking at them the entire time.
Too much eye contact.
Too much eye contact, especially if it's a woman. And I'm like, oh, gee, now she's really thinking I'm eyeing her up and down. I'm like, no, you're just in my comfort zone right now. So.
Awesome.
Well, now when everybody goes to the panel next week, they'll know not to smile at you, Chris.
Yeah. I'll make sure I'm facing the back wall or something too to help myself out, keep myself out of trouble.
Well,
that's an interesting thing, because I tell you, one of the best conversations with cybersecurity people, right, or security people, especially in the cyber world, when you're an ambivert, you gotta force yourself to be an extrovert every once in a while. That's when you really get into breaking things down into common language, right? And that makes a huge difference when you're having a conversation, especially cyber related. That's just what I've found.
Yeah, it definitely helps if you are well versed in a subject. I guess it helps to help you speak about it, right? So.
Absolutely.
Fumble my way through some physical security, I guess.
It goes back and forth.
I took a class.
Definitely.
Yeah.
But no, Angela, we really appreciate having you here. Like Chris said, once we first started talking about doing this show and maybe, possibly having some guests on, like you said, you and I had met previously. My previous position working with the Area Maritime Security Committee, and that external engagement component of things, and I think I could tell we both kind of had that same common goal of making those connections and just seeing where we could fit in, where we could help people, and where we could all help each other. So if you don't know, we made kind of rolls into the first question that, and sent you some of this ahead of time, but again, we'll probably get into a few other things as well. But since you have made that transition from the federal side of things into a more private industry focused information sharing, side of things, how has that transition gone for you? And kind of, can you just give us an idea of what that experience has been like?
Absolutely. It was seamless. I am so lucky. It was a dream job to go from leveraging my passion for the mission and working with companies and people to try to work together. This was just such a natural fit with my new role, and staying in touch with cyber, staying in touch particularly with energy and the critical infrastructure, leveraging my previous government contacts. And, I hit the ground running because I knew what we had to do. It was a young organization and there was a lot of opportunity, and I was just really ready for new challenges. And we've had some really great successes, and I feel very rewarded and really so excited. It energized me to help work out the trust issues, get people together, focus on the issues which are constantly changing. It's so dynamic. Cyber never gets boring, because as soon as you think you've figured one thing out, they're going to throw something else at you. So it really does help to stay informed and have a community and be involved, so that things don't make it past you, or if they do, you've at least heard something about it and you can do some of your own research. So for me, it's been a dream job.
That's great. I think one of the key words you had there was community, right? I think what I recognized with that our group the group that I worked with offshore with the Gulf of Mexico, was they kind of saw, attack against one was attack against all. And I think maybe that's probably kind of what you're getting at there too, is that helps to break down some of those barriers and form those bonds when you have that kind of approach, it seems like. And I think Julio's had some similar experiences as well in his his profession too. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think Angela, you're hitting it right on. Part of it is not only that one attack in one sector can definitely affect many others when it comes to cybersecurity, but I think it's the relationships at the end of the day, and I think we've talked about this in every single episode of the 4 that we're recording now. That
veterans
since way back.
We're old
since
hats
way
now.
back. But yeah, no, I mean, I think first time I met Angela was probably about 5-ish years ago, when I got back here to Houston, and we hit it off right away. And I think a lot of it was the communication, the conversation, the sharing of information. But really, what makes this group successful is the trust in maybe not organizational wise. Definitely that helps, but person to person wise. And I think we see that here in the Houston area more and more and more. Especially given Chris, you and I have worked a few, at least one big incident together, and it just makes it so much simpler to do that phone call at 7 o'clock at night, and I don't have to worry about minutes. Is Chris? He might be having dinner right now. I don't want to bother him, but you know what? We know each other. We're comfortable, so it's okay to make that phone call, and Chris will pick up the phone, which is funny, right? Because in that one case, had like at least 2 other calls. It's like, hey, did you know about this? I was like, yeah, I'm aware of it. I'm trying to get a hold of Chris. And they're like, we've been calling Chris for like an hour. He doesn't pick up. I said, well, give me a minute. Hold my beer. Let me give him a call. And,
that's why I give him my office phone, because I never answer it. Anybody that knows me or wants to talk to me has my cell phone.
So yeah, I mean, I called Chris. He picked up right away, and I was like, all right, what's going on? How bad is bad? Let's talk about this. What do you want to do? How can I help you? And then it went on from there. So I think that communication, that trust, and that consistent discussion and collaboration, that makes a difference in the world. So.
Yeah, and Julio, you didn't get that overnight, right? You didn't say,
"Oh no,
let me get the phone book," right? These relationships are developed, and it is getting to know each other, and not just trust, but who do you call when, and are they going to recognize you and pick up the phone when it's you? And so I think that's a very important. The other point I want to make on this topic is I learned very early on that the bad guys in cyberspace, those bad actors, they are working together. They have no problem sharing notes or tools or information on who's paying a ransom, and let's go get them because they're paying and they're going to be a soft target. They have no problem working together on their mission, which is espionage or fraud or some other trying to theft of trade secrets. They have their own agenda, but they're willing to share and to compare notes, and that's what makes them partly so successful. If we can get the good guys to do the same, learn from each other, understand best practices, avoid mistakes that others have lessons learned, it can save people from trying to go it alone and figuring it all out by yourself, when we can band together and be that much stronger.
There's definitely strength in numbers.
Right. And more resilience, right? Because I know what you know now, and you know what I know, and we don't have to, we'll add in what Chris knows. And how about Nick? You got something to contribute to this conversation. So it's really about good communication.
Absolutely. And I don't want to. Here I am again. I know, Chris. I talk too much, but bringing it back to we always like to combine cyber with physical security, but I think this is a part where the Coast Guard was extremely successful back in 2003, 2004, when they created the Area Maritime Security Committees to discuss the Maritime Transportation Security Act, MTSA. And the whole purpose was to bring in and develop a community to where people could share that. And I think that's where we really need to emulate that in the cyber world, and have this clusters of committees and communities that can share all those best practices. So I'll pass it back to you, Chris. I know you were going to say something. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say is, it's not only just the resilience piece of it, but a lot of times, it's like when we have a problem, we just can't quite figure it out ourselves. Reaching out to others to get potential different viewpoint. And I've seen that. I've done it this way. But really expanding on the diversity of your answer, and instead of just sitting there trying to forge ahead on your own. Instead of recreating the wheel, borrow somebody else's. And I think that's one of the things. Earlier today, I had a meeting with some Coast Guard types here in this area, and we're like, hey, I'd shared them with them a version of incident response plan that I use, and I took my name out of it and took the organization's name out of it, and I said, yeah, now you can use it as a template. And they're like, wow, that was, you probably just saved a lot of people a lot of time, because it's a simple incident response plan. And we all have, some expertise to bring to the table. And even if it's somebody that's relatively new, they may come to it with a whole new viewpoint that might make the end product even better, that can make it simpler for somebody that's just starting out. So, I mean, we get so wrapped up around the axle, because we've been doing it so long, and it's like, oh, we got to do it this way. And somebody comes in with a fresh idea, we got to take it.
Or a place to start, like this might not be a perfect fit, but tailor it to your needs, and you've got something to start working with.
Definitely.
Yeah. No, for sure. No, I think that, just those partnerships that we talked about, and, the time that it takes to build those up. I think that's the key thing that everybody's on the maritime side of things. My viewpoint is we're kind of struggling with that right now, is that, we've established ourselves so well on the maritime side with physical security and having those groups and discussions that, everybody, wants to jump straight into being able to speak the same way as cybersecurity amongst the maritime stakeholders. And it's hard to recognize that it took a couple of years to get up to the point where everybody was comfortable, even after 9/11, having those discussions. But I think everybody recognizes we need to do it as quickly as possible, but it's not going to be done overnight as well. So that challenge of managing expectations as we break down those barriers as well has been an interesting side, from this standpoint. But I was curious, Angela, we talk about, kind of all the different sectors are looking at, their own stakeholders, but they're also looking across to other other sectors and other operations, and watching for the latest large cyber attack that happens, and saying, oh, well, I'm glad that didn't happen in our world of work, or it didn't happen to our business. But back in May, of course, we had a pretty major pipeline attack, and I was just curious if you could tell us kind of your experience from where you work, how that was going through it at that time, but also some of the impacts that you've seen afterwards when it comes to the information sharing standpoint.
Yeah, thanks for that question. This gotten a lot of attention this year. We've been talking about ransomware for 10 plus years. I remember a road show where we were going to different meetings and had presentations about what to do to prevent it, what to do to be ready in case you are impacted, how to respond and recover. But for some reason, I think I know the reason, but for a particular reason of that cascading effects this one had on people seeing a shortage of gasoline to certain areas of the country, it was kind of a wake-up call to say, this is a real world example. We can't ignore this anymore, that you can't say, oh, it'll happen to someone else, because there are so many interdependencies, and it's drawn a lot of attention, I think, in a good way, to say, hey guys, if you don't have this all figured out by yourselves, come join an information sharing group so that you can collaborate. And there was a lot more sharing. There was a lot more need for quick answers and quick information, which was easy for us to turn around. And member to member, company to company, peer to peers said, well, this is what I know. This is what I can contribute. Who knows what's the latest and greatest about this? And sometimes it was just canceling out misinformation that was as important as knowing what really happened and how things proceeded. So I thought it was an extremely positive response from the energy sector to share amongst themselves and then to help other sectors. Critical manufacturing was not short behind in an attack on their facilities. So it's been kind of, cyber has been one big event after another. So it never gets boring, but it also, we can learn from each other. We can say, how do we prepare, prevent, respond, recover that much better after this incident? And that's been tremendously helpful to see the increased interest in information sharing and commitment to join and to be part of the group and say, we want to be involved. And it does take some effort. It takes, your level of engagement, what you put into it is probably going to be what you get out of it. And I've been saying that for years with InfraGard too. So this is very similar. It's being part of that group that helps each other, that has each other's back, and that when someone has a challenge, how do we support them and prevent others from getting into the same trouble? So I think it's overall had a positive impact. There's some negative results, of course, with good intentions that might have unfunded mandates and reporting requirements that are going to be difficult, if not impossible, for companies to follow and agencies to respond to. But overall, I think it drew a lot of attention to an existing problem. The concern I have there is I think it can embolden those bad cyber actors who say, "Oh, look, they're paying. Let's do more fraud." If it pays the bills, they will not stop. They will keep going.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Nick.
No, I was just going to say thanks. No, I really appreciate all the details you're willing to share on that. I think that's some great information to have, definitely. So yeah, go ahead, Julio.
No, I was going to say, I think Angela hit at a critical point in there is, understanding and knowing those dependencies and interdependencies, right? I think we learn, as well as, all these cyber bad actors also as well understood. It's like, oh, check this out. We can hit this one thing. And yeah, we did a great job hitting it, but look at all the stuff that happened afterwards. And they might not been expecting that it was going to create all the shortages that it did, but it did. And now they know that, all right, let's look at what else we can hit that can have this cascading impacts, and that, drive us in it. And we were already dealing with a supply chain, right, challenges. And I'm saying supply chain in the physical way, right? Boats, automobiles, trucking, pipeline, not necessarily cyber related supply chain stuff, but the physical impact, which is what hurts people, which is what creates the most panic. Because I think one of the things we've talked about when it comes to cyber is you can take down an entire network, and unless it's Facebook going down or some major, something that people use on an everyday basis in the internet, it doesn't mean anything, right? Like, this company got hit and their network went down, and what if it didn't impact the public? Then is it really that big of a problem, right? But now they figure out, okay, they pretty sure they learned that if they hit something that can have a cascading impact that will challenge the public in general, then that really hits that mark, and that gets into creating that terror, right? And creating that, oh man, this is a really bad day. And so I think the point that I'm trying to make, I think it's important for not only us it's important for the government and it's important for the private industry to really pay attention to, okay, if something happens to me, who is going to get affected down the line?
Mm-hmm.
And two is, who do I depend on that if they get affected, how bad is that going to be for me? And I think understanding those dependencies and interdependencies, it's going to be crucial moving forward. Because at the end of the day, right, that proves that, okay, I need to make sure that I'm good, but I'm also need to make sure that the people I depend on are good, and the people that depend on me, they need to, feel secure and feel safe that we have our stuff together, right? Our ducks in a row. So I think that there's a lot of things to learn in here. Beyond cyber protection is also understanding those dependencies.
Julio, you teed me up for one of my favorite points is having an incident response plan and exercising it. And I know I've been in tabletop exercises with you, Julio, with you, Nick, and you learn a lot. You go, oh, we thought this was going to happen,
Right.
but this group needs to be involved, and planning that out when you have time to think through it and learn before an actual event. I really encourage tabletop exercises, having your response plans ready and adjusting them as needed when you do learn from an experience, having an after action. I you always think you know more than you do when you get into the weeds of it. And
Yeah.
so I wonder what your experiences have been with exercises.
Well,
Well,
go ahead.
Let me go. I will go beyond the exercise.
You can go real world.
Real world. And the incident response plan saved my butt. It saved my organization's butt. And I think that is, you hit the nail on the head and you drove the nail through the board into the next board with your statement. I mean, that's what I've been saying ever since. Everybody's like, well, how did you do it so successfully? And incident response plan. And I practiced it, in 18 months, we had already had 2 tabletop exercises. And, and just to get the people start thinking within my organization. And yeah, there were things that I didn't have in my incident response plan, but after the incident, they were in there. And, it's a continuing, living, breathing document. I explain that, to anybody. It's like, it's not, written in stone. It's not even written in wet concrete. It's literally written in water. It's fluid. It needs to be able to change as it needs to in order to reflect whatever, government regulation requires or whatever the situation is within your own organization. So, yeah. But Nick, Julio, exercises.
Well, I mean, no, it's been interesting, moving to incorporating that aspect into what was almost purely a physical consideration before. How is that, going to go forward? But again, a lot of the same things though come into play though. Communications, between groups. How quickly, who do you call and how quickly do you call them? And if you can't get a hold of that person, who do you go to next? Like just that same exact thing, but isolating the impacted areas. Same thing happens in cybersecurity. It's okay, isolate the impacted area, go and evaluate what exactly happened. Is it contained? What further mitigation, measures? So what I've been talking about with a lot of these things has just been this kind of trying to I call it demystifying cybersecurity. And because as soon as you attach cybersecurity, it seems like to anything when it comes to an incident response plan, that all they want to focus on is like, well, let's figure out how to analyze what happened on the cybersecurity side of things. It's like that's going to come eventually. You and the fact is, you may not ever know exactly everything that happened on the cyber side of things, but what you do need to know is how do you address what's happening in the physical side and in what you're seeing and what everybody else is being impacted by. And just because it was a cybersecurity attack that initiated that, does it really change what you're dealing with after the fact? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But So it's been some of that, aspect to it as well. You've always had, especially in the maritime environment, and especially when you go into vessel operations, you've always had secondary means of control, communications, emergency equipment. There's always been, primary, secondary, sometimes tertiary means of, addressing those issues. So what about a cybersecurity attack actually impacts the secondary and tertiary? The primary impact may always be there, but the secondary, tertiary, those ones down the line, are you still going to be able to utilize those? So some issues like that have come up when you look at the maritime side, when you're talking about, the ships operating offshore. But then that's the interesting component from from this challenge on the maritime side, is that it's not just, okay, what happens on a ship? Well, we also have to consider what happens on a facility, a shoreside facility, the pipeline that's coming in to feed that shoreside facility, or the pipeline that they're transporting their materials out, to the refineries and things like that. So yeah, it's like you said, it's just a very dynamic, and once you think you've figured out one challenge from it, there's another one popping up right behind it. So.
Well, so in my experience, one thing I've seen in a few cyber exercises is the need to have this, and again, I think I've mentioned this in every single episode of us, is that physical cybersecurity convergence, right? And when we talk about that physical cyber convergence, is the physical side has a lot of experience. I mean, at least, many, many years in the maritime environment. Let's count this from MTSA till now, at least over 15 years of experience dealing with emergency management within the physical security world. And how do we apply those lessons learned into the cyber side? So one thing I've seen in exercises is you have all these, and no offense to all my cybersecurity engineers, they're great engineers and they're amazing. They know their systems. But when it comes to managing the emergency, there are more efficient ways to do it. And the physical security side, they have figured that out. We just need to adapt that into the cyber side. It's not just the code and it's not just the system, but is, okay, what impacts are outside of that? How we're going to divvy up duties, and how we're going to divvy up tasks, and who can help us, right? Because it's not just the information security team, it's not just the cybersecurity guy, it's not just the CISO. It's an all hands evolution, just like any other emergency at a facility, right? A physical security world is the same way. It's not just the FSO doing his thing, or not just the emergency manager. It's his logistics, his operations, his
Robert
adaptation.
Mazzulli, last week or 2 weeks ago? That was, one of the things he said, when in his former organization, when he had that ransomware attack, everybody down to the dock worker was involved in responding to their cyber incident. And I'm like, I mean, that's what it's going to take if you need to, to do a recovery,
Right. But it takes understanding. Again, I think we go back to what we talked at the beginning of this episode. It goes back to that communication. It goes back to the relationships across divisions, right? And have the willingness to learn and to adapt. Yes, it's not going to be the physical security guy or your emergency manager is not going to give you the 100% solution, but it'll probably give you 70 to 80% of it. And then we just need to figure out how do we adapt that to the cyber world to make it work. And, a lot of organizations, they're getting it. And I've seen a lot of exercises where you see the people having those aha moments. And I mean, I love to see that, because that there is that convergence, and there needs to be that integration. Security is security, period, regardless of whether it is physical or cyber. It's all one of the same, pretty much, right? We're as strong as our weakest link. So
yeah,
we just need to continue, I guess, banging on that drum and until more and more people get that.
But yeah, that aha moment, I love that, because so this will be I'll quit hogging it after that. I know, because we invited you on here to speak as well, Angela. So, but the aha moment I had came from it was actually somebody I'd known for the longest time, but he had been in the, I've been in the Coast Guard for a long time, even before I came in, and still with the organization when I was doing one of my last exercises with the Gulf Area Maritime Security Committee. He came up to me afterwards because we had done another cyber focused exercise, and he came up to me afterwards because he ran his own Area Maritime Security Committee in close by port, and he said, "We got to start doing this cyber shit, don't we?" Excuse my language, but he's like, I was like, "Yeah, that's basically it," But it's kind of, they've been holding out for a little while, like, how far are we really going to have to go with this stuff? But once he saw the exercise and some of the people that we had come in to speak from the Coast Guard Cyber Command and things like that, he was like, "Okay, yeah, no, it's time to get on board with it." So so that was kind of cool to see that, because it was somebody that I know, he knows his stuff, and it taught me a lot throughout my career. So to see him have that aha moment because of something I had put together was kind of cool. But yeah, it's definitely been an interesting evolution to be a part of.
So, Angela, one of the things that I've got kind of an issue with is the lack of information sharing and trying to get people to want to share information. Within the local area here, I put together a kind of an informal Slack channel group that anybody on the Houston Ship Channel could sit there and drop in physical and or cyber related threat information, and getting it out and shared quickly, and try to do it without having regulators in the room, oversight, because everybody's like, oh, the regulator's going to slap a fine on me because they're going to find out we had something go wrong and stuff like that. But it's still difficult to try to get people to get in there and trust that. I mean, what is, how have you considered, what do you consider to be successful information sharing partnerships and in between private industry groups and those groups and government agencies? What is it that you're trying to do, or can you suggest we do?
Well, it's $1 million question, and I've been at this for almost 10 years, trying to promote and support communities for information sharing, both at the private and public side now. And I think the key answers that I've found that are critical to good information sharing is trust. And part of trust can come from anonymization or NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, or understanding that there's a level of confidentiality inherent in reporting to a government agency or sharing amongst peers. That is very important. That's one of the, I think, the big keys to an ISAC or an ISAO, an information sharing organization or information sharing analysis center, is they can perform that function and get the word out without being exposed or having concerns that it's going to come back to haunt you. I've seen success stories are really a motivator for people to say, "Oh wow, that really helped me. Now I can see the value of what I can give back and help." And what comes around generally goes around in the way of, I might always be a sponge until I have something that I feel like I can share. And I think you mentioned Slack. I think tools that offer security in the form of encryption and again, an opportunity for peers to talk to peers, to share more real time than throwing something in an inbox and seeing when it makes its way out. These are things that I think can be keys to success. No one thing is the silver bullet, but when you compound these things, when you add them all up, I think the necessity and the freedom, the opportunity, if you build all those things in to make it relatively convenient, it can't be hard to do because it takes too much effort. I'm not going to make the time to do it, but it's relatively easy. I have a trusted group that I can share with. Maybe I don't have to identify myself. Someone can, obscure my name from this post or from a submission to help the others in the community. I think that there's several components of this, and it's just not easy, but I think that there are keys to the success that I shared with you, that if you don't have those, it's going to be that much tougher.
No, I think that's a great point, Angela. And I'm listening to you, and it makes me wonder what it. And this wasn't a planned question, but this kind of happens when we're discussing. The certain agency, right, with security twice in their name. They came out with this JCDC, like Joint Cyber Defense Collaborative. And it's a brand new thing, right? But and right now, as I understand it,
is it though, or is it a brand new thing?
I don't think it's.
That's my personal opinion. That's not going to be attributed to anyone.
Meta, Facebook. It's still Facebook.
Right. So I don't think the concept is nothing new, right? But it's trying to develop something, I think, at the national level, but which. Great. I'm sure I can support some stuff that's done at the national level, but in my almost 20 years now of experience, it's like, yeah, national level stuff is great, but and I think I'm stealing one of your analogies that I heard you use one time. If your fire is in Houston, but your fire station is in DC, how is that helping anybody? And I think that's where this, local groups and regional groups, regional collaboration groups, I think that's where the rubber meets the road, right? Because those groups at regional levels and local levels, those are the ones that are actually going to have the most impact. Do they need a support at a national level? Sure, that always helps. It's always good to know what's going on in another region, but I think and hopefully one day we'll have our own regional, collaboration groups and whatnot that, where we actually can solve problems. Because I think that's my challenge with national stuff. It's like, yeah, you can't solve local problems from that. There's a reason why there's local government and then there's federal government, right?
Hold on. I think I run the Houston Maritime Security Collaboration Group. Did I hear you say collaboration group?
100%.
But all right, so okay, so
100%.
Houston's got one.
Was it last episode? In one of the episodes we talked. There's only like 3 of those in the nation right now that we can. That at least I think the Coast Guard recognizes, right? I think it was you, Nick, that brought up one day. Like, how many cyber security committees do we really have?
Oh yeah. How many actual established cyber subcommittees? Yeah,
right.
We're still trying to get that number.
Right, and so I mean, and I think that's where really that's where the rubber meets the road. We need to have more of that. We need to have more groups like this ones in other regions, and how do we make that happen? I mean, I know the InfraGard program and the FBI has been extremely successful with that over the years. How do we focus on cyber? How do we get more people to participate and collaborate at local levels?
And I'll just add to my comments before that I firmly believe that there are best intentions with these
absolutely
and wonderful people who are hardworking, patriotic, awesome people that are trying to do something new. But I think good intentions are such that just putting a new name on something that's already going on is not inventing. We got brand new answers, but good people.
Dito, no, I'm 100% with you. Somebody got a good bullet out of that, I guess, but no, it's how do we get more people to participate? I guess that's the question. Right?
Well, and you mentioned InfraGard. It's been around for over 25 years. It also shows the success of local focus in getting people together that can meet face to face. It's nice to have Zoom calls and stuff like that, but you really develop the relationships face to face and working through in-person exercises and events and learning from each other. So I think that's why there's 80 chapters of InfraGard, right? Because you can focus on what's important to your region and elevate the priorities for your surroundings and your stakeholders and your people that you are shoulder to shoulder with.
Definitely. And I've seen that because, like you, I've moved around the country and whatnot. So I was up in, I really started in private sector when I was in Maryland, Delaware area. And, I got involved with the Delaware InfraGard and I could see the major difference between like that and then when I moved to Michigan and the InfraGard there, and then coming down here into Texas, you know, the one here in is much more involved and people are wanting to do more and be part of it than they were in Michigan. Delaware was good. I mean, we had good working relationship with FBI, but we didn't have the numbers like we do here in the Houston area. So, it's amazing in seeing that. And as far as like information sharing, I mean, I've seen everything from the agricultural side of things to retail and hospitality, ISAC, the MS ISAC, and then MTS ISAC, and and the MPS ISAO. I think I've seen a lot of different alphabets, and and sometimes I sit there and it's like, okay, what is it that I liked about the ones that I've seen, and one of the things that kind of I really don't know, and but like the MSI SAC, so widely used and so I guess well funded, and I guess it's federally funded, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe that's something that for some of these other ISACs that are out there, especially ones that are critical infrastructure, to start federally funding some of these, other ISACs so that they can get industry involved in there and not just, and that way you get, because I think part of the problem we have is, from ones I've seen is like retail hospitality and the MTS ISAC. And I'm not dogging them for this. I mean, they have to have money, but it's pay to play, right? And so it's unfortunate, but that really rules out the small organizations. I get invited to be part of these CISO groups and all this other stuff that goes on, but they're like, oh yeah, it's $15,000 to annual membership, and I'm like, $15,000? Where the heck am I going to get $15,000? I can't pay for it, and I sure as hell know my organization would be like, they're going to tell me to go fly a kite.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing when we're looking at the ISACs and stuff like that. You got these, small organizations, mom and pops, but, more, maybe even a little bit more than mom and pop. They might have 40, 50 employees. They can't afford to, some of these information sharing and capabilities. They benefit from it, but they don't have the they're not going to be able to pay for it. So I think if Congress could open up some wallets and federally fund some of these ISACs, especially critical infrastructure, I think you might see a better sharing going on and more going on with that.
And I think you hit it right on the head. And again, I think this is one of the things that it's a continuous topic in this podcast and in our conversations in general, right? Even when we're outside of the podcast is, there's a lot of organizations out there that they might not even reach 100 employees, but whatever they produce, it really could make a huge impact. If they're not there one day, some major players are going to be like, "Oh crap, what do we do now?" Because we don't have this one thing that we need that this tiny little company makes. And I've seen that. I'll tell you on the the healthcare sector, there are some companies that are not that big, but so what do you guys do? I mean, you're such a small company. Oh, we make whatever part for like peacemakers in the United States or the world, and you're like, oh wait, what? And I mean, you got a tiny footprint and not even 100 employees, but the one thing that you're making is like, wow, if you stopped, if you cease operations tomorrow, what does that does to the healthcare system and everybody that needs a peacemaker? That's again, I think that goes back to understanding, and I agree with you, Chris, that there should be some funding in general. We I think right now some of the reprogramming of a lot of the federal funding, security there used to be fiscal security money. Now it's being split and driven towards the cyber side, where I think the right answer, those are two so broad areas.
It's robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Absolutely. And so there needs to be separate funding, I think, for you got to keep those two animals fed, because if you take from one to support the other, then you know the enemy recognizes that, and it's like, all right, so we can't hit you on this end now, so we're gonna go hit you on this other end that we know you're weak, and then it's just that flip flop all the time.
Yep.
Chris, I want to speak just from our perspective and the perspective of other ISACs that I'm familiar with. Is you have to have funding to cover administrative costs.
Exactly.
And the structure that ONG ISAC, it's on the public website, so I'm not sharing any state secrets, is it's a tiered level. The more revenue you make, the more your dues are. So I talked to a company just yesterday who's already applying because he said, well, what am I getting out of it? I've been with, had good experience with other ISACs, but what can ONG do for me? And I said, well, we can give you 2 licenses to a threat intel platform that would cost you a whole lot of money on your own. I can give you 2 licenses to a secure communication tool and connect you to the other industry members that could cost you a lot of money. You can even use it as an out of band for your own team when you need secure comms, and email isn't going to cut it. So you've got 2 licenses for that. You've got access to 2 full-time cyber threat analysts who can help you be extra resources or do research or help augment what you know, canvas other companies to see what they know and share it back with you. And that's the kind of reach that really hard for small companies to consume. But once they commit, if the good intel is funneled to you and handed to you in one line of communication where I can pretty much ignore a lot of the noise that's not timely, not relevant, not important to energy. That's all curated by analysts who are dedicated to just scoping out what our members need to know. And they said, I'm in, right? So I think it's not truly representative of small guys that can't play. They can actually get a lot of bang for their buck by leveraging an ISAC. It's, the higher you go in annual revenue, the more support you're going to give to that organization, because you're going to also contribute or consume. You have teams of people that can be engaged and involved and need, broader access to the threat intel platform that we leverage. So I think there's some perspective there. And my 20 years in federal government, if you get federal funds, there are strings attached. And it always, even grants, I'm like, what you asked for.
Very true. I'm just wondering how,
and that's where I'll wrap up on that topic.
Yeah, so I'm just wondering how, like, the MSI SAC does it. They offer a lot of the same things, and it doesn't make a difference if it's Podunk, Iowa, as a member of it, as a local government, or the territorial or tribal governments, because anybody SLTT anywhere, and even Port of Houston, they could take advantage of MSISAC, and then not have to pay a dime to get the support out of that. So I'm just wondering, and I'm just trying to
be your next special guest.
yeah, yeah, good idea. So but to have that that ability to sit there and be able to provide that stuff and then not expect I understand you need to pay the bills, you need to keep the lights on, right? So it's completely understandable. I'm just asking that our leadership in Washington expand beyond, because they saw the multi-state was a requirement. They saw SLTT needed it. Let's expand that out to critical infrastructure. Expand out to ONG. Expand out to the maritime transportation system. And
do you think I'm just curious, do you think it's a product of how these were created, right? Because I mean, it was created under a presidential policy directive, right? I mean, that's what created the ISALs and the ISACs, but it hasn't. I mean, to my knowledge, there hasn't been the legislation to really back that up, right? So does that really? Do you think that maybe drives some of where we're at with these organizations? Would that help or hinder? Do you think?
Well, and I think there's always going to be varying levels of maturity, right? The FSISAC has been around for 20 years. ONG ISAC has been around for 6-7 years. And, there's everything in between. There's new ones that roll out all the time. So I think that it also depends on the size of your sector too, right? What's the size of the government, state, local, tribal, agencies? And there's, compared to perhaps retail and hospitality or, another, I think financial services is huge. And, they're under a lot of regulations. So they have different motivations, and they've grown to mammoth size accordingly. So I think that it's not comparing apples to apples.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. When you start working across sectors, definitely you look finance, you look at oil and gas. I mean maritime. Hell, what 90% of the world moves in maritime? I mean, that's pretty huge. So that there shouldn't be so much of a challenge there as it probably there could be in other areas like retail and hospitality, where your profits are really not that big when you compare it, and they're just different. And in cybersecurity overall, right? One facility or one organization can have a very complex system, and some others, have very flat systems. So there's not much there. It's just, I guess, different tools depending on the size of the organization. That's a great point.
Yeah, but I mean, look at what you said earlier, Julio, about was the joint collaboration groups, whatever the alphabet soup you threw out there was.
The newest acronym.
Right. And it's like doing it at the federal, but why do it at that level when why not go break it down into the smaller groups that are already existing, like the ISACs and the ISLs? They've figured it out. They've got the connections already. They've got the plugins. Why can't we just just do that instead of sitting there creating one giant?
Yeah, I don't know what the answer to that is, and my thought is just knowing government. Somebody thought this sounds pretty cool. Let's just put a new name on it and throw money at it. Isn't that how we solve all problems? Oh, we have a problem. Let's create some. 9/11 happened. Well, let's create a new organization. Let's call it Homeland Security, and let's throw a whole bunch of money at it, and we'll see how that works. And here we are, 20 years later, and okay, now we're somewhat figuring it out. But did we really needed that one agency? Or should we just boost it what we already had in place and promote that collaboration? I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know what the right answer to that is, but it seems like every time we have a new problem, people feel the need that we need something new instead of just bolster what we already had in place.
Yeah.
So that's a great question though.
So we're come to the top of our hour, and Angela has been great, and I'm looking forward to hopefully be able to shake your hand next week and run into you. Nick, thank you for setting us up and meeting Angela. It's great, and I've learned a lot tonight, and appreciate it. And Julio, your insights are always great. So appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So, any last words, Angela, before I take us out?
I think if the take home for me is information sharing does work when you're actively engaged. If you're going to be, sit on the sidelines, you're not going to see the benefit, and you're not going to contribute back and generate momentum with little pieces of the puzzle being put together to see a bigger picture. If Julio has a piece of the puzzle in his pocket, and Nick has a piece of the puzzle in his pocket, and Chris, you've got another piece, and so do I, and individually they don't make any sense, or there's no pattern that we can really identify, putting them together and starting to see the broader scope of things. That's, to me, one of my favorite analogies about information sharing is I need to know what you know, you need to know what I know, and putting it in a more structured, like, let's see what gaps we still have and go for those, but understand better what the collective can know and understand.
Very well put. Thank you, Angela. So one last effort in saying, these are our own personal opinions and expressed during this recording, and they do not necessarily reflect our past, current, future, or any other time, fourth dimension employers, whatever we got.
Multiverse.
Yeah, exactly. So these are just it's just us, and it's our thoughts. So with that, it's a wrap, and we thank you again for watching and joining in. We are slowly growing in viewership, so it's great. And don't be shy. Hit us up on LinkedIn, or you can email us at marsectalk@gmail.com. And appreciate y'all, and have a good evening. Thank you.
Stay safe, everyone. Share a lot.
There we go.